This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here. A review of Virgin Voyages Scarlet Lady this week. But first, staff writer Richard Sims joins us with Cruise News. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
We kick things off with a man being sent to jail for threatening a Carnival Cruise Line ship.
So you know those T-shirts that say, my family went on a cruise and all I got was this lousy T-shirt? This is kind of that story come to life in the worst way possible. So 19-year-old Joshua Lowe was living with his girlfriend's family in Michigan, which right there's already a story there. They apparently last year decided they were going to go on vacation. They were going on a cruise on the Carnival Sunshine. And they were asking him, would you stay behind and take care of our pets? And apparently he said yes, but then got kind of ticked because they weren't taking him with them. So he sent an email to Carnival Cruise Line saying there was a bomb on board the ship that they were traveling on. There was thankfully no bomb, but Carnival had to search all 1,000 or so rooms on the Carnival Sunrise. I may have said Sunshine earlier. I get those two mixed up all the time, but it's actually the Carnival Sunrise. In court last week, the young man admitted it was all his fault, accepted full responsibility and blame, and he was sentenced to 8 months in prison. And that is where, as far as we know, he is right now. So I don't know whether the moral of the story here is don't send bomb threats to cruise lines or don't trust your 19-year-old, don't trust your daughter's 19-year-old boyfriend to sit at home in your house while you're off having a great time.
Right. And a big cut made by the CDC last week could have major impacts on cruising down the road.
So every day we're hearing about government cutbacks, some of which are, very controversial. We're also seeing a lot of those cuts being reversed after someone takes a closer look and says, yeah, that doesn't really make much sense. And I kind of am hoping that that is what we're going to see in this case, because the CDC just axed a slew of civilian staffers who helped run the VSP, which is the Vessel Sanitation Program. Now, this is the program we talk about all the time where twice a year ships are boarded for unplanned inspections. And that's sort of how we know how things are working on the ship as far as, cleanliness and other aspects. The agency was already understaffed before these cuts, so there are definitely going to be more problematic things moving forward. And look, here's the thing. If you're looking to cut spending and waste, this isn't necessarily a great way to do it because these inspections are actually done at the expense of the cruise line. They have to pay based on their gross tonnage, and it's not cheap. It's very expensive, and they also have to pay for the travel expenses. In fact, that's one of the reasons that they had already lost staffers was, there's a lot of travel involved. And again, these are civilians. These are not people who, for the most part, are government employees. So this is going to be a little bit of a problem. The CLIA, which is the Cruise Line International Association, it's sort of the lobbying group for cruise lines, has definitely tried to downplay the importance of this move by saying, and I'm quoting here, this is a statement they sent to Cruise Radio, the cruise industry is a model for health and wellness protocols and practices. Gastrointestinal illnesses are extremely rare on ships, whereas on land there is a 1 in 15 chance of contracting something compared to just a 1 in 5,500 chance on board a cruise ship. And that is true. We talk about that all the time, how, you read about the infections on cruise ships because of the fact that they do have to report to the CDC. But this is not about that. This is not about neurovirus because the program monitors a lot more than just that. In fact, this particular program isn't really involved with neurovirus. This is more about, for example, are the foods being kept at the right temperature? Are there, we always see reports of fruit flies at the buffet, that kind of thing. This is more about proper safety protocols, making sure they're in place, everything on the ship. And so to have them stop this is potentially very, very problematic. And I'll be interested to see, how the industry reacts to this, but also whether at some point somebody realizes we're not really saving a lot of money because the cruise lines do pay for this themselves.
And it looks as if Hawaii is hoping to make a few bucks off the backs of cruisers.
How often have we talked about this of late? You need to raise some money? Tax a cruise line. Why not? In this case, the cruise industry, I should say, is actually fighting back. In fact, almost as soon as Hawaii revealed their plans to slap cruise lines with a new tax, people in the industry were like, yeah, might want to think twice because we are definitely taking this to court. A rep for Norwegian Cruise Line, which actually is the only line operating a ship out of Hawaii, told Hawaii News Today that the proposed tax was unconstitutional. Hawaii, in turn, insists it is totally their right and that they only want the cruise lines to pay their fair share. So the new tax that they have basically passed in both of their houses over there, I believe, would either come in the form of a flat fee per person or an 11% tax per cabin. The cruise lines have actually said, we will consider pulling out of Hawaii. We have plenty of other places we can go, which, again, we've seen this same sort of argument made in other locations that have tried to use the cruise industry as a way to make more money by taxing them higher. So keep an eye on Hawaii because that could be a very interesting fight over the next, couple of months or longer.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it seems like everyone is saying now needs to pay their fair share. They need to pay their fair share. They need to pay their fair share. But it just seems like it's a talking point that's being said without any thought sometimes.
Yeah, I think what will end up happening is they'll take a very close look at what this money would go for, because my understanding is that in situations like this, and again, I'm not a legal scholar by any means, it's just sort of what I've been reading over the last few days regarding this story, that in order to implement this kind of thing on a cruise line, they would have to be able to prove that the vast majority of this money, if not all of this money, is going to port infrastructure, things that the cruise line directly impacts. And there is no doubt that there are places where cruise lines have, kind of really gotten, I don't want to say gotten away with anything, but they've maybe not contributed as much as they should given the impact of over tourism in those areas. But that doesn't really sound like it's the case in Hawaii. So I think that will be kind of the approach that attorneys for the cruise lines take, is that this isn't our fair share. This is an overreach on the part of Hawaii.
And Royal Caribbean has halted visits to Labadee, one of their most popular destinations out there.
Yeah, there are parts of the Caribbean that currently have advisories against them from the U.S. Travel Department, including some of the Bahamas, and various areas in the Caribbean. But one place where it's the most serious is Haiti, which is where Labadee is located. They are under a level 4. I believe it's level 4 out of 5, if I'm not mistaken, which basically means Americans should not go there, according to our State Department. Now, it's really important to note that there is a big difference between going to Haiti in general and going to Labadee specifically. Labadee is a private destination. It is protected by private security, but given the proximity it has to Haiti, because it is part of Haiti, it's not surprising that Royal has canceled several sailings to this destination. The big question is how long they'll continue rerouting guests to other places. Do I think cruise passengers would be in danger at Labadee? It's very doubtful. And I'm sure Royal Caribbean doesn't necessarily think so too. But it's the perception of danger. When you've got the State Department saying, hey, this is at a level 4, American citizens should not go to Haiti, and Labadee is sort of part of Haiti, of course people are going to be concerned about that. There's also the perception of doing something to prevent a dangerous situation. I mean, if they went there and something bad happened, God forbid, because that would be not only obviously a disaster, but it would be a PR nightmare and very difficult to recover from. So I think that Royal Caribbean is quite wisely making the decision that, yeah, we're going to sacrifice stops in Labadee for a little while, even though it's a very popular destination. We're going to, as we hear all the time, err on the side of caution, as opposed to putting people in a position where they might be uncomfortable going or putting putting us in a position where something bad could potentially happen. So really just a matter of time before they decide to go back and how the situation in Haiti develops. And we did actually reach out to them, and Royal Caribbean gave us a spokesperson for Royal Caribbean gave us a statement that says, and they're using the same words I was just using a few minutes ago, basically, out of an abundance of caution, we have temporarily paused our upcoming visits to Labadee. We have already communicated with guests directly, meaning people who were on cruise ships that were intended to go to Labadee have been informed that they will not be going there and what their new itineraries are. And, we don't know whether this will last for a couple of weeks or for the foreseeable future, but we will definitely continue to update this story as it develops.
And a passenger was denied boarding at a cruise terminal for a very unexpected reason.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to have to add, make sure your passport is in good shape to the list of things you want to do before you head to the port. A man named David Hornsby and his wife flew to Australia. They were planning to board Cunard's Queen Elizabeth for what was no doubt a very special sailing. But when they got to the port, they were denied boarding, or I should say he specifically was denied boarding because his passport had loose stitching. Now, you might say, what does that matter? But I think one of the things that someone looking to fake a passport might do is take the stitching out, put fake pages in, restitch it. Not that that is what was true in this case, and most people probably it wouldn't even occur to, but this particular cruise was going to be making a stop in Indonesia, and Indonesia has very, very strict rules regarding passports and the condition they're in when presented. Cunard made it very clear that this was not their decision. This was being done by immigration officials who raised the concerns about this ship's itinerary and the fact that this passport might not be accepted. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't let him board and say, when we get to Indonesia, you may be stuck on the ship or whatever. Unfortunately, the couple, was not able to board. They lost thousands of dollars and are seeking refunds, which, as far as we have heard so far, have not been issued. But it may come down to what kind of travel insurance they have and how much it covered. That's something we talk about all the time, is not only make sure that you have cruise insurance, but make sure that the insurance you have covers the needs you might encounter at any point during your trip. You've got insurance that covers you while you're on the ship, but it's really good to have insurance that covers you from the moment you leave your house until the moment you return to your house, sort of end-to-end coverage, so that, let's say, your flight gets canceled. Well, that wouldn't be covered by a policy that only covers you while you're on the ship. Let's say your car service, runs off the road and you miss the ship. That wouldn't be covered unless you have end-to-end travel insurance. So hopefully they did have that and they will be able to work through some of this, because otherwise they're probably eating a pretty penny.
Not to mention, I was looking at a flight one time from London to Sydney, 19 hours to fly that nonstop.
No.
Yeah.
No. See, I'll just wait until I can afford to do a cruise that, one of these 70-day cruises that takes me to all of these places and I don't have to fly anywhere.
Exactly. And on a lighter note here, we'll wrap things up with Holland America. They're rolling out a program designed to make sail away feel like the special occasion it is.
I am really excited about this because they just announced this week, and I'm boarding a Holland America ship in 2 weeks. I'm doing the Koningsdam to Alaska, and I will get to experience this. So I'm really psyched. A lot of times on cruise ships, most ships have sail away parties, and they're very fun. And, you do all the dances that I don't know how to do and always say I'm going to learn to do, but don't. So I stand around looking like an idiot. But there was a time that this is sort of hearkening back to. There was a time when getting on board was a very special thing. In the sail away, you would have champagne, then you would, if you watched the Love Boat, they would throw streamers over the edge, which probably is not great for the environment. So Holland America is sort of taking us back to that in a certain way. They have partnered with Tattinger's, which is a champagne company, to offer champagne and 2 special cocktails that will be available at sail away. Now, these are, the champagne and the cocktails are not free, but if you have the signature or elite package, drinks package, which I do, they are included. They're also going to be passing out appetizers. They will have waiters with trays circulating through the sail away party with appetizers, and those appetizers are going to be specifically themed to whatever your particular cruise happens to be. So mine is Alaska. It'll probably involve some form of seafood, maybe salmon, or green pea soup, which is served on almost every Holland America ship when you're in the icy strait. So this is just kind of cool. And it's not just the Alaska cruises they're doing this for. They're doing it for all of their cruises on all of their ships. They really want to make the effort to have Sail Away be something, extraordinary and something memorable to kick off your vacation. I'm really stoked about this.
A nice touch. We've been talking with staff writer Richard Sims. As always, Richard, thank you, my friend.
As always, glad to be here, Doug.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Kurt just returned from a 6-night cruise on Scarlet Lady down there from Port Miami. It went to Costa Maya, Roatan, and Bimini. He joins us on the line to share his experience. How you doing, Kurt?
Hey, I'm doing good.
Good. Hey, man, I got to ask you, because you're normally like a diehard Royal Caribbean guy. You have like over 20 cruises with them. What made you want to stray off and pick Virgin Voyages?
It looked interesting. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know how to evaluate it other than just try it and see what it was like.
Fair enough. So you make your way from Maryland down to South Florida. Any pre-cruise time before you boarded?
Yeah, we did we traveled down by car and took a few days to do it. I wasn't in any hurry, and so we just kind of drove down and enjoyed a little time in the car. It wasn't that bad, actually.
So you make your way down to Port Miami. Now, there was a big music festival, I believe it's Alta, that was happening during your embarkation day. Did that make it an issue getting into the port area?
Oh yeah, it was a nightmare. The cruise line warned us about it, which was fortunate, and told us to take the tunnel into the port area, which I'm assuming was better, and because it didn't go right by the music festival, but it was still a long, slow drive in. Once we were in the port area, well, even that was pretty busy, but it wasn't a problem getting a spot in the garage. I was a little concerned that because that garage is closest to the music festival, that there might be some people there from that walking over the bridge.
Mm-hmm. With Virgin, they do later embarkation. What time was your embark?
2:15, but we were in the terminal at 2 and in our cabin at 2:30.
Okay, so it's about 30 minutes from curb to ship. So I have to ask you, because you're normally stepping foot on Royal Caribbean ships, so your first non-Royal Caribbean in a long time. What were your first impressions walking on board?
It's not very elaborate. It doesn't have a lot of stuff going on. There was a lot of energy. There were a lot of people, kind of the crew was pretty energetic, but it doesn't have any big, open, expansive spaces, at least not that I discovered. And so it doesn't really have the ship itself does not look super pretty. Mm-hmm. It's good. It doesn't look run down or anything, but it definitely doesn't have those big open spaces or a lot of access to windows to the outside. So you're on a it feels small, I guess is the way to put it.
So no elaborate atrium or promenade running down the ship?
No, there's an area called the Roundabout. It's a couple of stories, but it's pretty tight, so it doesn't feel that expansive.
Gotcha. And you make your way to your stateroom. What kind of room did you book for the 6-night cruise, and what did you think of it?
It was an obstructed balcony, and it was not very obstructed. It really worked out really well. The balcony space was fine. It had the hammock, like, you've seen on other videos and so forth. And, that part of it was nice. The cabin, the storage area that's available in the cabin is not very expansive. I can't imagine doing longer sailings on it personally. We take way too much stuff. I ended up leaving a lot of stuff in packing cubes so that I could access it easier.
Okay.
But it was tight from that perspective. The bathroom is really small. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when I finish a shower and I come back out of the shower, I push the shower door. You could move it. It was a flat door. You could move it inside inside the bathroom area or back into the shower. I'd push it out of the way. So I just had a little more elbow room. It's small.
Let's talk about the food on board Scarlet Lady. Now, we'll go to the buffet area first. I guess they call it the galley, where it's a hybrid buffet, because they really came out strong when they first announced this and said, we won't have buffets, but it kind of seems like one, but just a little bit different.
Yeah, I guess I would compare it to food trucks, because you're getting things for the most part that are made while you wait, rather than walking up and getting pre-prepared things, other than like pastry items and so forth. And there's some sushi that's made up that you just grab and go. But the galley is nice. One thing that we found was that a few stations are not open all night long. They're open till like 3:00. So we passed on one of the restaurants once thinking that we were going to grab something in the galley, and the choices were more limited at night.
Do they have any 24-hour places on there aside from room service?
I don't know if it's 24 hours, but there's like an egg and, like breakfast kind of station that's open. I think it is 24 hours, but I couldn't swear to it because I wasn't up that late.
Some clarification on the galley then, which is kind of their buffet, I guess we'll call it. When you're ordering your food, you're standing there and waiting for them to cook it in front of you, or are you placing your order with a server?
For the most part, they're making it to order. You're standing there and you're waiting. Some cases they have beepers so that you can see when something's available. Depends on the station.
Okay, fair enough. So then for the specialty restaurants on board the ship, because and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no really main dining room per se, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
How did that play out for you?
Well, one of the tips I have is to try to status match, because that gets you some advantages. And one of them for us was that we were able to book those restaurants 45 days out rather than 30. And so we had pretty easy selections for that and for showtimes. And I could make the reservations fairly easily. You can't duplicate, at least on the level sailing we had, you can't pick, like the Italian place sounded the most appealing, and it was actually for us. I was going to book that twice. It wouldn't let me do that. It said, you have a reservations already. You've got to pick this other one. So it's good, but you do have limitations on what you can do and when you can do it.
I'm curious why the Italian one really stood out to you.
I don't know exactly. I just seemed like more what we're accustomed to. We're not big Asian food eaters. There's a lot of they had a place called Razzle Dazzle, and that kind of converted to an Asian place. Then there's Gumai that is Korean barbecue. So there's quite a few Asian options, and some of it was good, and some of it we didn't care for. So the Italian is like something that we both enjoy and seemed really good. I thought it was great.
What did you think of the wake?
Good. Just the menus are kind of slim because they're more like a specialty restaurant. So you've got some limited choices. There's not lots of choices in that and there's not a lot of things. I was asking for salad like with spinach or something, and they couldn't do it. They didn't have the ingredients there. So they have a limited amount of stuff and they don't make a lot of changes.
So we talked about the wake. We talked about the Italian restaurant. Where else did you go on this one?
Pink Agave. And I really expected to like that a lot. And that was kind of mixed. Some of it was good. Some of it was not so good. And it wasn't just our opinion. We met another couple and we were comparing notes on what we'd eaten. And there were some things in there that weren't that great. So I think like the Extra Virgin is the Italian place that was pretty good across the board, everything we tried. The other ones were kind of hit and miss.
Interesting.
The wake was good though. And you can do brunches at some of these places too. But again, sometimes they're a little limited. Like the wake, you could not get bacon. But Razzle Dazzle, you could get like candy coated bacon, which was pretty delicious, as you can imagine.
Did you go to the Dock House at all?
Yeah. And actually, that was one of the first things I did. I needed something. I wasn't sure where everything was. I kind of wandered in that area and they had a little tapas menu out. And I thought, well, I'll try this. My expectations were low. I think I had shrimp and flank steak. That was delicious. It was fantastic. It was my first exposure to the difference between that and other lines I've been on. And it was fantastic.
A lot of people talk about the Korean restaurant Gumbae, I believe it's pronounced. Did you go to that one as well?
We did not.
Okay. Gotcha. And then did you sit out Gunby or however you pronounce it?
We went.
Okay.
In some cases, like there was a chicken, almost like something you'd get at the local Chinese place, but a little spicier, almost like a General Tso's chicken. That was delicious. I loved it. But that's kind of more conventional stuff. And there was another guy, that's the table that you do as a community table.
Sure.
There's like 6 people around. You do a little drinking game. It's fun. But the food that they cooked later was okay or really overcooked in one case. So it was not great. The guy at the table that had been on lots of other cruises got like 3 bowls of this chicken. And I thought, wow, that's a lot. And I mean, you have other food coming, but that's what he ate. And the reason is because that was the best thing that they had.
With all of these restaurants being included in the price of your cruise, are there upcharges on the menu?
No, there are upcharge items. I think the wake had like a tomahawk steak. That was maybe, as I remember, it was about $75. So it's not cheap to do an upgrade.
Yeah.
But the upgrade, I'm sure that, you could worry that the preparation wouldn't be very good, but the preparation generally was pretty good at these places. So the upcharge might be worth it.
Let's talk about the entertainment on this 6-night cruise aboard Scarlet Lady. How did it stack up for you?
It's a little different, and probably that's probably one of the most disappointing things. I didn't always know what the shows were intended to be. I didn't see a lot of them, but I would look at the description of them, and there was not that much description. It was like they wanted to surprise you when you got in. We saw Dual Reality, which is like the show to see from what I understand. And the way I would describe a lot of their entertainment is like street performers, like buskers, because there's no like elaborate costumes or anything. And this show was almost like a modern recreation of West Side Story, where there's 2 gangs and they were fighting it out. And then finally somebody falls in love with somebody on the other side. And so that's how it ends up. We happened to sit pretty low, and I was sitting next to one of the performers, and she was yelling at the other side. And I'm like, what's wrong with this lady? She's really getting into this. But she joined the group after a while. So
Gotcha.
I kind of figured something was up.
Outside of like the shows that are happening there in that little arena, any other like music around the ship or anything or comedy shows that may have caught your eye?
Yeah, I went to a couple of comedy shows. One was in the afternoon, which was a weird time to have it, I thought, but I did go. It was like 3:00 in the afternoon. I think it was a rainy day, so it was not a bad day to go. And that was a more local guy. It was North Carolina, I think he was from. He was pretty funny. Then there was a guy from London. Usually I like English comedians. And honestly, I thought he was terrible. And the venue was weird too. It's called the Manor. And so there's a lower floor and then an upper floor with a railing. So, but there were so many people that wanted to go that there were a lot of people that were not on the railing. And so they couldn't see the comedian. That works for a music venue, but it doesn't really work for a comedian when you can't see him at all.
Yeah.
You know, they had no idea what he was doing. Unfortunately, I thought he was terrible. He just did a lot of crowd work. Like he went around to the front seated people and, you know, tried to interact with them. It got to the point where he didn't really have a lot of material. And he went back to some guy and says, "What else can we talk about?"
Oh,
and at that point, he kind of lost me. I was like, "Come on, dude, you got to have more material than that." So, anyway.
How was the ship on sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
It's pretty chill. And for the most part, it's not like a mad dash to the chairs. Everyone gets up a little later from what I can tell. So we were able to, we're pool loungers. We'd like to go out, read around the pool. And that was not too difficult to find something. I also require shade because I burn like crazy. So that wasn't too tough, but the pool areas are not big. So it does fill up, but it wasn't too bad.
Gotcha.
But things like the galley, not too tough to get into. You know, I mean, you can find a seat. Then that's also not very big, but it's not super crowded.
How is their casino, and is it non-smoking?
I didn't notice anyone smoking. I don't think it is because I think people were smoking at the casino bar.
Okay.
But I honestly didn't really notice that. Obviously, the smoke wasn't that bad. The casino is kind of a hallway. It's a pass-through area, so it's not very big at all. They do have table games, but it's not big. They had a promo one day, and I played that, and that was about it.
So you leave Port Miami. What was your first port of call? And give us your highlight from there.
Roatan was the first port. And Roatan, we stayed in the cultivated port area, and it was nice, and it wasn't crowded. We were only ship there. I don't know if people stayed on the ship, but there was not much of a crowd, and I almost felt bad for the vendors because there just didn't seem to be that many people doing what there was to do. I wish we'd worn swimsuits off because, you know, they have a pool, and if you buy a drink, you can use the pool, and it looked nice. It's like Costa Maya was later, just on a smaller scale, but it looked very pleasant. It's just that we didn't want to go back and forth to get swimsuits on, but I wish I had them. It was a nice place.
And how was Costa Maya?
Costa Maya was kind of the same. And we went to the port area. I expected to be jammed because there were 4 ships scheduled, but 2 of them did not dock because it was so windy and wavy.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to get to Maya Chan, and I waited too long, and I couldn't get a reservation. And as I was walking around and thinking about it, I thought I should have contacted them again because I'm sure they had cancellations.
Yeah.
Because 2 ships turned away before we even got there. It was crazy. It took them a long time to dock, but we docked, and so did I think it was Mariner of the Seas after us. But that was it. 2 ships out of 4. So it was pretty desolate. And it's a nice port. That one we did pay. I mean, we bought a couple of drinks. We sat in a beach area. There's so much seaweed that it was splashing over the wall into this pool. So we never did use their pool because it was just filled with seaweed.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how the seaweed was. Last time I was in Costa Maya, I went to Maya Chan, and the beach was covered in seaweed. The guys couldn't rake it up fast enough down there.
Yeah. Well, they weren't really trying too hard to get it up at the place I was at. It was pretty thick.
Yeah, it can get pretty bad. Then your final port of call was Bimini, and Virgin has the Bimini Beach Club. How was that?
We loved it. That was fantastic. You take a tram to get out there, and we got out fairly early, which I would recommend because then you can pick what chairs you want. There's two sides to it, and as you walk in, the right-hand side is where the DJ sets up. The DJ blasted me out on one day on the pool deck, so I wanted to sit on the other side, which is actually, from my perspective, better. It was closer to where they set up the food, and there was a restroom not too far away. There was a bar right there. So on the left-hand side would be my recommendation, and it was awesome. They allowed, because they haul out pool toys later, I brought some small inflatable things. It's like a netting with a couple of cylinders on each end, and float around in the pool before they brought the official pool toys out. Mm-hmm. And man, there were some jealous people looking at me with my relaxing pool toy.
Nice. I haven't been there on Virgin, so I've only done it with Celebrity, Holland America, and Carnival. So like when I went, it was like a beach day pass, and it was like $50 or $60, but it included unlimited well drinks, but the food was extra, and there was like $20 hamburgers and chicken sandwiches, chicken tenders, and drinks were like around, I don't know, $15 or so a piece, because I wasn't drinking the well drink stuff. Is it like when you're there, food's included, like if you're there with Virgin?
Yeah, food is included, and it's not the hot dog hamburger kind of thing that you get at other places. It's kind of interesting. I wrote down a few of them: Caribbean chicken and coconut curry, and then there was a pumpkin curry and red snapper, and some sort of watermelon jicama salad, corn on the cob. Oh, that was awesome! That was like a street corn kind of thing. It was really good. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if it would be, when somebody tries too hard to make things fancier than they really need to be for a beach day, you kind of wonder whether they can pull it off. And it was all really good.
And that's good to hear. So you make your way back to the ship. Any stops at the Hilton Resorts World before going back to Scarlet Lady?
No, we went to the beach and we headed back. I mean, it was a pretty long day. We got out there about as early as we could and hung out. And when we were coming back, there were a lot of other people coming back too. So there were people that stopped at like the stores that were on the way back. But we went right back to the ship.
Okay, fair enough. So then when you're at Bimini, you're probably 60 miles or so off the coast of Florida. So was it one of those things where you leave Bimini, it was the last day of your cruise, and the next day you're back in Port Miami?
Yeah. When I looked at like the path that we took, it was kind of a loop to use up some time, I guess. It wasn't just a straight shot back.
Yeah, it was wild. When we left MSC's private island a couple of weeks ago, we left at 1:00. And by 4:00, we were off the coast of Miami already. I'm like, wow, This is insane. So you make your way back to Miami. How was the debark process?
Good, but not really well explained. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I don't know. Most of their sailings are shorter, I think. So there's probably a lot of people that carry off. We generally don't. And we had other traveling to do. So we had a lot more stuff than we really needed for the sailing. And so we definitely wanted our luggage taken off by the cruise line. And it was not that clear what you were supposed to do. As it turns out, I went down to get luggage tags. They were exactly the same as our embark luggage tags. So I looked at them, and there was nothing new to fill out. I just left the old ones on, and I let them go, and they showed up at where we were supposed to pick them up. There's not a lot of instruction. I kept thinking, if I were, I was kind of new to this line, so I kept thinking, what would a new cruiser think about this? I don't know what they would think they were supposed to do, because it's not that apparent. It was not that clear what you could do versus what some people were doing. We got off at a reasonable time. It was plenty of time to do my usual, have breakfast, and then make our way casually to get off the ship. And you get off later. I forget what the time was.
The new terminal there is a few years old. Did you find it intuitive?
Yeah, and then once you get out of the terminal, it's pretty easy to get out and out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Just have to cross over the street to get back to the parking garage, but it's easy enough.
Do you have any first-time tips to offer anyone sailing Virgin? I know you mentioned about booking your dining reservations in advance and also status matching.
Take a water bottle, because they do not have plastic water bottles, and we used ours extensively. There were some of the fountains that are set up for water bottles. They had one of those. They have ice stations. You definitely need that. And I don't know, but I heard that the water on Bimini was not very good, so we loaded up water bottles to take with us. So we didn't really have to try it. Their drinks were not very good, so I think that might have been part of it.
Gotcha.
But that is definitely something that we used extensively. Watch the safety video right away. It's really long. As soon as you get in your cabin, crank that thing up because it runs for a while. And it's fun, right? It's got like some rock theme to it, but it's not short. It must go for 5 or more minutes.
Oh wow.
And then you have these fobs that you wear on your wrist that are your key card. Essentially, you don't really have the card that you typically have. You have this little RF chip on your wrist, and they work great. I thought that worked out really well. I've used I don't know, Royal offered them, but it seemed like I always had to take it off in order to get the chip to work properly. If I was trying to pay for a drink, I finally gave up on those. But this one works pretty good. You just hold it up and it worked pretty quickly. It almost feels like they can identify who you are when you walk up for your dinner reservations. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what the range is on them, but there were a couple of times that I thought, I don't know how you know who we were when we just walked up, but you did.
I'm sure it does.
But they don't always work that well. Like at our room, I would sometimes hold it against the room lock and it wouldn't work. And then I finally thought, well, I'm going to flip it over and see what happens. And that worked better. And then I had it happen where I was at a coffee bar or something. And the guy said, here, let's flip it over. So there's something to it. It's not just my interpretation of it. Even the staff thinks that they work better in one orientation than the other.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's a little bit like Princess Cruises Medallion, where you have that little thing in your door. I mean, it sounds like you have to stick this on your door for it to open, but where they know who you are as you're walking up to them and approaching them.
Yeah, for that they did, but for the cabin doors, no.
Right.
The cabin doors don't just lock when you're in the basic area. You actually have to hold it next to the pad. Yeah. The receiver pad.
Gotcha. Biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
It had to be Bimini. Mm-hmm. Bimini was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The food was really good. It was beautiful, very relaxing, fun. Everybody seemed to have a good time. And after they brought the pool toys out, that was a crazy party, but it was over on the other side, so that was fine with me. Mm-hmm. But it was a fun place. I liked it a lot. We've done Coco Cay a lot, and it was pretty comparable, but a much smaller kind of area. So more easy to navigate, I would say.
Did you find that the value was there for the price you paid?
Well, I mentioned I had an obstructed view cabin, which really wasn't obstructed very badly. So for us, yeah, the value was there. I mean, if I added up what gratuities would have cost me on another ship and, the kind of meals that we got, it was definitely there. It's just that there were a lot of things, a lot of entertainment that I seemed to be missing. And that might have been because I didn't really give it a good enough chance. I don't know. But I'll give you one example. That we went to a bar, or I went to a bar, and there was a band playing, but the description of what was going to happen was this was like a karaoke with the live band, which was not of interest to me. I didn't know. I said, "What's the name of this band?" And the description was the rockoke, which is karaoke with a band. Mm-hmm. But that's not what they were doing. So I would have gone to see this band if I'd known where they were playing. But I had no idea. So I don't know if it's the house band, but they were pretty good. But I don't really want to listen. I want to listen to them sing, not other passengers. I'm not a big karaoke fan unless you get a huge group of, friends. But just seeing other people is not my jam.
So then, with 20 plus Royal Caribbean cruises under your belt, do you think you would sail Virgin again?
I almost bought an onboard pass, something that you could travel in the future, because it was a pretty good deal. I think it was about $150 to reserve, not directly reserve, but have the discounts available when you do reserve. I almost got one, and I decided, no, I'm going to hang on, and I'll see if I can get a good deal. And I didn't know whether it would be worth it to tie it up or not. I don't like the time restriction, even though it was really generous. It was like 2 years. I thought, yeah, I could see myself coming back on one of these in that time period. So yeah, I liked it. It wouldn't be my go-to, but it was a nice break. It was kind of interesting.
All right. Fair enough.
People were really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, just other customers were pleasant.
In closing here, Kurt, your final thoughts of Scarlet Lady.
I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it, and I can see myself on it again. But I did love Bimini. I thought Bimini was a riot, and I'd love to go back there. But maybe Virgin's the way to do that, because it doesn't. Maybe based on your experience, it's not quite the same experience with another cruise line.
All right, Kurt. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about your first trip on Scarlet Lady and the Virgin Voyages brand. I sure appreciate it, bud.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,